All right, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Sacramento Air Quality Management District. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Carr, Cruz, here. Frost, Guerra, Hanson,
Here.
Harris,
Here.
Kennedy,
Here.
Lee, McLashin,
Here.
Natoli, Peters,
Here.
Cerna,
Here.
Starsky,
Here.
Terry.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Director Peters, since you're not sitting yet, would you like to do the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well done. All right, Madam Clerk, please call the first item.
I'll read this statement.
Oh, yes.
So this meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District is cast live without interruption on Metro Cable 14, Local Government Affairs Channel, on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse. This meeting is being closed captioned and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will be repeated on Sunday, May 1st at 9 a.m. on Channel 14. Members of the audience wishing to address the board may fill out a speaker form located on the table at the back of the chambers and give it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Also, at this time, please silence your cell phones until the conclusion of today's meeting. The first item is Air Pollution Control Officer's report.
There.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I have 3 items to cover. The first is our Spare the Air season update. It starts Sunday, May 1st. The trigger level this year is lower because the federal standard is lower, so we expect more days that will be noticed. Last year we had 5. We should have more this year. And pollution isn't increasing as in mass. It's just the standard is lower. We're highlighting this year our new air quality app. You have some information here. There's a app card here for you. We've had 2,700 downloads so far, so we really want people to use this. Most people that access the district already know how to do that, and we have many, many people that come through the web, but we wanted to have on this media the opportunity for them to do that. We received a couple of awards for this, and it's a free download on Google Play, Apple, and Windows App Store, so people can go and access it there. We will start paid advertising on June the 13th on television after the primaries. It's a little expensive before that. So we want our money to go as far as it can. We'll be on Crossings TV, advertising in a range of languages beginning June 6th. We'll have transit bus ads. We're going to wrap some buses with the app and talk about that. Spanish radio advertising will begin on May 30th. We'll have outdoor billboards, digital near freeways, and poster billboards on surface streets. We have new campaign materials, a Spare the Air brochure. You have copies of that up there, and we have copies that we will send out to all of our board members and make sure that your staffs have those. Community events, I'll remind you about Scooter. Scooter had 85 events in 2015. We've actually sometimes had to have 2 scooters to cover all the events. But if you have events that you're sponsoring in your district area that you think are appropriate and would like a Spare the Air healthy message out there, Scooter's a very fun person to be there, a really big dog. River Cats, we will also be working on a range of areas with the River Cats. Spare the Air logo and messaging on the big screen at all games. We will be there in person at some of the games, and they are working very well with us. So that's my Spare the Air update. Next is district activities for the month of May. First of all, it's Bike to Work Month, and the district, as always, will be participating strongly. We had our kickoff meeting yesterday. The staff is really enthusiastic about it, and we've hired some young, strong people this year, so we're expecting our miles to go up, and we challenge them to do that. So we will report to you through the month. We've won that most years, and we anticipate doing that for our category this year. On May the 11th, it's the Clean Air Award Luncheon. It will be at the Memorial Auditorium, and of course we encourage all of you to attend. You're welcome to sit at our table. And we also have a half table at the Valley Vision Legacy Feast. If you would like to attend that and sit at our table, please let me know, and we will make arrangements for that. The last thing is cap-to-cap report. We had a very successful trip, as we always do, many meetings. I think we got through. There's always last-minute glitches. Our team's very professional. We train for this, and we don't train on the out walking, but we do train and have a great team through the year. Valley Vision supports this. So it was a great trip, and we hope to have some follow-ups that will leverage some of the things and meetings that we had this year. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. I don't see anyone punched up to speak, so Madam Clerk, please call the next item.
Next item is the consent calendar, items 1 through 6.
Entertain a motion.
Move consent.
All right, we have a motion from Director Starsky, a second from Director Terry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Unanimous vote. Next item, please.
Okay, the next item is public hearing, item number 7. Conduct a public hearing on the fiscal year 2016-17 proposed budget and proposed consumer price index adjustments to 2 fees in the fiscal year 2016-17 fee schedule. Provide direction to staff regarding development of the final budget and set the public hearing for the adoption of the fiscal year 2016-17 budget for May 26, 2016.
Okay. Good morning, Chair Hansen and board members. My name is Jamil Moons. I'm the Administrative Services Division Manager with the district, and it's my pleasure this morning to share with you information about the proposed budget. This morning's presentation will cover the initiatives and priorities that we're working on this upcoming year through this budget, a little bit about the budget document itself, a couple of anticipated changes between what we've released now as the proposed and what we will bring forward next month with the final. And also then we'll get into the actual financials of the district funds, and then open that up for discussion and direction to staff in developing the final budget. I do also want to mention that and included in this report and this public hearing are a couple of fees. The fee schedule that's attached are all fees that have been previously approved with the exception of 2, and those are the asbestos and community bank fees. We are proposing that we increase those by 1.1% by the cost of living, which is provided in the rule. So I just wanted to clarify, you have an attachment with several fees. The only ones that are being proposed are the ones on page 3. There's just 2 of them at 1.1% CPI. So I did want to mention that. This presentation focuses on the proposed budget. So our initiatives and priorities for this upcoming year is, as always, attainment of our air quality goals. That's our primary mission and where we focus a lot of our programs and our activities. In addition, in order to do that, we stay very involved with our lobbyists to track and work with legislation and legislators that are putting bills forward that affect air quality. And we are also focused on improving some of our air monitoring stations. As you know, we have an aging infrastructure with our monitoring stations, so we're scheduled to replace a couple of those in this upcoming year. And we've been back to you pretty often on our system integration project with SharePoint, the Enterprise Resource Planning Financial Program, as well as our operating software that we're going to be launching. So that continues to be a primary focus in the upcoming year. And with the Talk 6, with the OEHA organization, the hazard assessment, we're going to be focused on implementing those new rules as well. And then finally, of course, our ongoing collaboration and partnerships that we have throughout the community and state and nation with air quality organizations. Those are all important priorities for this upcoming year. The budget document itself that is released, the proposed document, the key financials were reviewed by the subcommittee of this board last month, and they did provide direction for us to move it forward to you today. It definitely reflects the funding necessary to meet the mission and the priorities of the district, and it's balanced. It's also available on our website at airquality.org.
Mr. Starsky. Sorry, Mr. Starsky has a question for you.
Mill, so is there anything changed from what you presented to the subcommittee in terms of the overall budget?
No.
Okay.
The financials are the same.
Thank you.
In regards to the next budget that we'll be releasing with the next board packet in this upcoming month, we do plan to make a couple of changes, not to the financials. The financials are solid for what we're proposing for 16-17. We have not, at least at this point, identified anything that we would change. However, we do believe that we can enhance our accomplishment section. You saw in the proposed, there was a placeholder there. We're working on segregating our accomplishments from our performance measures. We're trying to be more rigorous around metrics and establishing what our targets are in key areas of our operation and outlining that a little bit better. It was a recommendation from GFOA, the Government Financial Officers Association, and so we're taking that feedback and we're going to enhance that in this next period of time. So you'll see some enhancements around that section of the budget. In addition, there was a couple charts, some historical and trend stuff that we want to reorganize a little bit. After we put them in, we felt that there was a little better flow. So again, all in the narratives, nothing material, nothing in the budget schedules is changing. The last thing that we recognize that we do have to make a correction in is our long-term capital program, which affects not this upcoming budget year, but subsequent ones. We've moved our system integration project from our operating budget to our capital budget because it's been advised that we can capitalize that because it's a significant expenditure. In that transition, we didn't include it in the capital program. We took it out of the operating budget but didn't include it. And it's an out-year thing, not the current year. We've got the money in the current year in the capital program. So you will see an adjustment in our 5-year forecast. But again, it does not affect this upcoming year. And then just some minor edits to the narratives as we go through it and clean the final document up. So those would be the only anticipated changes that we have right now between the one that's been released and the one that'll be coming out next month. Just a reminder, many of you have lots of different budgets you're looking at, so just to remind you of how we're structured here at the district with our different budgets, we have the operating fund, we have the Colville Building Fund, and we have the emissions technology. The operating is the main repository for all of our financials, our staff, all of our operating costs reside there. The Colville Building is strictly the fund to manage the building, our administrative headquarters that we're at there. And then the emission technology is only the grant funds for the incentive contracts that we execute. No staffing, no other expenditures are in there. It's strictly funds that we give out for the incentive programs. So in that regard, our operating budget is proposed to be $22.9 million, and that's an increase of $1.6 million over last year. The Colville Building is status quo with a very minor adjustment of $10,000. And the emission technology is increasing significantly. And if you recall, at our mid-year budget, we asked you to amend the budget. We had anticipated a $10 million grant coming in this year. However, it's been delayed and it's coming in next year. So we reduced our emissions technology budget down this year. It was about, I think, in the range of 23 million. We reduced it down to 13, and now we've moved that 10 million into next year, and that's why it's the 25 million. That's the majority of that 12 million increase is that $10 million grant. And again, this is all grant funds in this budget. They all go out in incentive contracts. There's no operating expenditures in the emission technology fund. Just a little detail on our revenues. You can see these are our main sources of revenues, with the DMV revenue that comes in, our stationary source permits, state grants, other revenues, and fund balance that we use. This is the proposed budget and the changes from last year's and to this year. So again, there's that $1.6 million increase in the overall budget. I thought that would be interesting for you to sort of see the buckets of revenues, and these are our major revenue sources. We have others, but these are the primary categories. And you can see the DMV is fairly stable. It's increasing slightly, which is good news. Measure A as well, primarily as a result of the economy. It's very subtle, but it is increasing slightly, which is helpful to us. The stationary sources permit fees is increasing more gradually because of the approved fee increases, which were very necessary to keep doing what we're doing. So that's been good for our revenues. And then the federal grants have been also very stable on the EPA and the CMAQ on the federal side. In terms of expenditures, you can see here that these are the major categories that we book our expenditures by. Salaries and benefits are increasing about $500,000. Services and supplies is going up $169,000. And you can see the big bulk of the increase is there in capital expenditures, and that reflects our system integration project. So we have about $1.1 million budgeted in this upcoming year to get those applications into our operations. Again, briefly on Covell Building, it's a status quo budget. We are continuing to search for new tenants. We did get a tenant for half of the second floor space. We still have that other space open. We are very restricted because of how the bonds that are out. It has to be a government agency. It can't be a nonprofit. It's very, very limited, but we are pounding the pavement and trying to get that space rented to help increase the revenue. However, to be conservative in the budget, we did not anticipate, we didn't create the budget expressing any revenue from that extra tenant. So we're keeping it status quo. We hope we get a tenant which would help that budget out, but we didn't budget it in this year just because of the unknown whether we would find a tenant or not, and we prefer to be conservative. And capital expenditures, we have some improvements and enhancements going into the building, down in the garage on the second floor, and basically doing a refresh of that facility. And then finally, I alluded to on the Mission Technology Fund, you can see right there in new revenues, it's that $10 million coming in from that grant. And then the use of carry forward is just we recognize grants in the previous year and we allocate them and budget them in the subsequent year. And that's the in and out nature of this fund. As you can see, the money all goes to incentive contracts or back to reserves in that particular fund down on the expenditure side. This is kind of a look at the revenue from a perspective in that fund. It's generally fairly stable with the Moyer and DMV. Why you see a little dip in the blue line in the Moyer is in 13-14 we were supposed to recognize the funds that year, but they came in the next fiscal year. So you see a little dip and then a spike, but if you were to average those out, you would have real nice stable funding in Moyer. GMERP and funds coming in through Prop 1B is our real more volatile one, and that's why from year to year that fund fluctuates quite significantly. But again, it's attached to just the incentive contracts, and we only issue out those which we have funding for. So with that, the last thing in the kind of the financial area is just to remind you that we are looking at improving our overall financial system and our business processes. We will be back to you next month in May with a recommendation to authorize us to execute an agreement with a software vendor and implementer for our ERP solution. We have that out, it's out at RFP right now. It closes in a couple of weeks, and we will be back to you with that. We're excited about how that's going to give us much more flexibility, enhanced tools for improved budgeting, particularly the multi-year budgeting with the grants and types of activity and capital programs that we have. So with that, I would ask that you close the public hearing on the proposed budget and the fee adjustments, and then provide us guidance that would inform our development of the final budget for your review next month, and set that public hearing for adoption of the final budget for May 26th. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
I see Director Frost has a question. Director Frost.
Hi, Jamil.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
I just had a question when I was reviewing the agenda, and I was looking at a page that related to permits. And I can't remember what page it was on. I think it was in the 70s. But I'm looking at some of these graphs, and it's showing like Measure A is kind of flat. Revenues from Measure A, the trend is kind of flat. Permit fees go up, and I'm assuming you adjust them based on cost of living increase. Is that it?
Actually, permit fees, yes, historically, there's a rule that allows for them to be adjusted for cost of living adjustments. Also, periodically, we can bring fees forward where they're not fully recovering their costs, so they're not full cost recovery. And the district did that a couple years ago to the board, and the board authorized a 5-year fee increase schedule for our permit fees. So that's in effect. So
that's what you're working off of right now?
That's what we're working off of,
Okay.
approved fee increases. It was a 5-year, we're in the 4th year of the 5 years, correct?
Okay.
16, 17 will be the final year, the 4th year. 4th year, excuse me.
Okay, the reason I'm bringing it up is because I'm reading articles from Bloomberg that are talking about how the GDP is down, and I know gas, people are buying less, people globally are buying less. The real estate is supposedly up, but realtors are telling me that houses are on the market longer, so it kind of shows a slight slowing trend, which puts more pressure on businesses. And the question I have relates to our wonderful capital improvements that we did, which I thought were the most exciting, and I'm hoping other areas of the region can do great things like we've done at the district here. But are those efficiencies going to be able to pass on some savings to the business owners who are paying all these permit fees and who are, taking hits from all sides during this time?
Yes, that's a great question and a great observation, and we expect to realize some savings from the capital improvements. So when we get the technology in, we're hoping that we have more efficiencies in our business operations. And so as we do that, we would look to, as we have retirements over time, or as we have the ability to either, if the business grows and we can absorb that increased capacity or that increased business without raising staff, that would be our intention. Alternatively, if our business activity decreases for any given reason out into the future, we would have that ability to decrease staff through attrition. So, and just find improvements in how we do business. So yes, we are looking at that. We will be monitoring that. The other safeguard that the board put on those fee increases that I think will help the businesses is we have a cap. We can't exceed a certain amount of fund balance in our stationary source revenues, our fund balance. So we are watching that also very closely, and if we get to that point where we're starting to do that, we will definitely reduce down any potential future fee increases. So we're monitoring both of those, and we're hopeful that we can realize benefits in those areas.
That's great, because that seems like a barrier of entry for some businesses that are coming to California. They're trying to figure out why it costs so much more to do business in California than other states. And if we can be mindful of that, then maybe we can turn it around and work with them a little better. So.
Thank you, Director Frost. I don't see anyone else punched up to speak. If anybody else would like to speak, otherwise, I think we need a motion, right? Or is it?
Do we?
I wasn't.
Close the hearing and a motion to accept the recommendations, I think. And that would set the public hearing for May 26, 2016. Yeah. Second hearing.
I'll move that.
Director Starsky moves to close the public hearing and set the final adoption for May 26th. And I heard a second over here. Director Natoli. All right, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you.
Next item is also a public hearing. Item number 8, conduct a public hearing, and 1, adopt resolutions approving Rule 464, organic chemical manufacturing operations amendments, and repealing Rule 455, pharmaceuticals manufacturing, and 2, determine that the amendments to Rule 464 and the repeal of Rule 455 are exempt from CEQA.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Williams, and I lead the Rule Development Group at the district. The proposal I'm presenting today is to amend Rule 464, organic chemical manufacturing operations, and repeal Rule 455, pharmaceuticals manufacturing. The pharmaceuticals manufacturing category includes the manufacture of pharmaceutical products by chemical processes, as well as the production or blending of chemicals used for pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals manufacturing is a subset of the broader organic chemicals manufacturing category. and there are two rules that apply. Rule 455, pharmaceuticals manufacturing, and Rule 464, organic chemical manufacturing, which also applies to all other organic chemical manufacturing. Pharmaceuticals manufacturers currently must comply with the requirements of both rules. Here are the reasons we're proposing today's actions. The Federal Clean Air Act amendments require states and districts to adopt rules that implement reasonably available control technology, or RACT, for certain source categories. Pharmaceutical manufacturing is one such category. In January of this year, EPA determined that the district does not meet RACT for pharmaceuticals manufacturing and proposed a limited disapproval of our RACT demonstration plan. After EPA finalizes the action, we'll have 18 months to correct the deficiencies, or federal sanctions could be imposed. To implement RACT for pharmaceuticals manufacturing, we must have a SIP-approved rule that meets the standards of EPA's RACT guidelines for this source category. And although the emission standards of Rule 455 conform to the federal RACT standards, EPA won't approve it as a SIP rule because it lacks the test methods and record-keeping requirements necessary to make it enforceable. On the other hand, Rule 464 contains the necessary test methods and record-keeping requirements, but some of the emission standards are not as stringent as EPA's guidelines. Here's what we are proposing to correct the RACT deficiencies. First, today's action will consolidate all requirements that apply to pharmaceuticals manufacturing into Rule 464. This will ensure that Rule 464 meets all the emission standards in EPA's RACT guidelines, as well as includes the test methods and record-keeping requirements to satisfy the enforceability criteria. As part of the amendments, we are also proposing to strengthen some of the standards for pharmaceuticals manufacturing to satisfy state requirements for us to adopt all feasible measures and best available control technology, best available retrofit control technology. There are rules in other California districts that contain some feasible and more stringent standards. Finally, we're proposing to repeal Rule 455 because after amending Rule 464, Rule 455 will no longer be necessary, and repealing it will eliminate duplication. This is a summary of the standards we're proposing to strengthen. First, we're proposing to decrease the emission thresholds that exempt entire facilities and individual equipment from control requirements and increase the required control efficiency for certain types of equipment. There's only one pharmaceuticals manufacturing facility in the district, and it is already in compliance with the proposed changes. Therefore, there will be no impacts. We followed our normal public notification process for the workshop and for today's hearing, which included website posting and notices by email, and we conducted a public workshop in March. There were no written comments received from the public or the affected source. EPA had 2 comments on the draft proposal that we have addressed. Today, we recommend that you conduct a public hearing, determine the amendments to Rule 464 and repeal of 455 are exempt from CEQA, and adopt the resolutions approving the amendments to Rule 464 and repealing Rule 455. Thank you.
Director Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kevin, I have a question. In the staff report, on page 5, it says in that second paragraph that EPA testified in support of Rule 64, and now we're coming back and saying it's not stringent enough because it doesn't meet certain, because then on the page 7, it talks about, as you summarized, that it doesn't meet all feasible measures and so forth. So is it that they want it both ways, that they think it's good enough, but then it's not good enough? I guess I'm kind of curious as to, those that regulate us. I see Alita perking up too. So I'm just curious, is that they testify and say, yeah, this is fine, and then they tell us, no, maybe it's not fine.
The original SIP approval for that rule goes back to the either the late 1970s or early 1980s when the rule was put into the SIP. Now, we submitted a plan in 2006 that we were required to submit that showed that the district satisfied RACT, basically a complete recertification of all the RACT requirements. In reviewing that document, this is one category where they opened up that an analysis of that rule again and said, we're not going to consider that meeting RACT because it isn't enforceable the way it is.
So they always reserve the right to go back and make you do it over again?
Yes.
No, that's what's great about America. Great, thanks.
Thank you, Director Natoli. Anyone else that would like to comment? Anybody want to take action?
Well, I was going to need a public hearing on it, and then I was going to ask, I just had a
Open the
question.
public- okay.
Question for council. So
thought this
after the public hearing, I'm going to propose moving it, but do you need a separate motion on the CEQA action from the actual? Okay.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing. I don't have anyone signed up to speak.
No.
We'll close the public hearing.
Okay, I'll move the item. We'll move approving Rule 464 amendments, repealing Rule 455, and finding that it is that Rule 464 and repeal of 455 are exempt from CEQA.
Is there a second? Second. All right. Second from Director Harris. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. Motion carries. We do public hearings a little differently at the city than you might do, so.
Next item is the staff report, item number 9. Receive and file a report on Air District efforts related to the management of food waste to avoid air emissions and create a regional resource of renewable transportation fuel and electrical energy.
Okay. If I get to the first slide here. There we go. All right. This is a really important effort for the district. Organic waste creates air emissions, and you can see the windrows there from one of the facilities where we have a composting going on there at the right. This has been a growing area, and as the state goes through and wants to deal with divert waste from the landfills, that is a way they do it, and that is going to increase emissions, and we're trying to figure out ways as a state not to do that. So we're really supporting biodigester technology, and you're going to hear a couple of pieces of that from Katie Cox and Dave Sikich later in this presentation. This isn't hugely long, but we wanted to cover this because the Solid Waste Authority Board is hearing this item later on, and we wanted to get our recommendation on the books, and we will be testifying there in support of them funding, moving more money into making biodigesters work better. And it's not so, it's two pieces. It's the biodigester. We're in the process of working with Clean World down in South and at the transfer station in South Sacramento. They have an excellent facility. It has been sized up to be commercial. It's ramping up to be commercial, but one of the things that causes that to be a problem is getting the food waste from the homes and businesses into a facility like that and making it economical. We've had issues with that. They're working on those as they go through. We would love for this technology to be very successful, because what it does is it takes something that we've been sending to landfills and makes it into a renewable product that we can burn in school buses and in the city fleet, and it's renewable natural gas. Okay, the difficulty with source separation, of course, is that you have a state law that requires you to do this. It's got dates, 2016, 17, and 19, for when you have to address certain size commercial sources. And it's not an easy adjustment for the generators, and the system we've had for picking up and taking waste out has not adjusted well cost-wise to this change in the system. So we wanted to tell you about one program that we're working with Breathe, and Katie Cox will come up and talk about that. And then we will have a representative here to talk about the organic waste recycling especially. So first I'll have Katie Cox come up from Breathe. Katie.
to switch over to the next slide. That shows.
Thank you. At Breathe, we have helped several schools begin with the source separation of food waste. 5 in total. We have American Lakes Elementary, Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary, Two Rivers. We're working with Leroy Green, which is a 6th through 8th grade site, and we've just started with Natomas Park Elementary. So far, we've helped a total student population of just under 3,000 students.
Go the
Upside
use the
down.
other. Yeah. There you go.
So schools and other organic waste generators. do
Director,
need-
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Katie. Director Cerna has a question.
Sorry, could you go back to the map, please? This does not include either our main jail, the county's main jail, or our CCC, right?
Correct.
Yes, this has school, you can see the,
Is your microphone on? Okay.
It was on, yeah.
it doesn't want to turn green.
Just hold it down.
Okay, so yes, you can see the categories that are included there. The jails are not on it, on that particular map. That one, because Katie's talking about schools, that one was particularly focused on the number of schools that are out there in the area.
I noticed there were some other institutions, though, including hospitals that are obviously not schools, commissaries, commercial kitchens, and I know I thought there was some interest, or there have been some discussions about our jail facilities actually being part of this effort. And I was wondering, since the map was up, whether or not that those discussions are continuing.
There's a group that has been meeting regularly, convened by Valley Vision, that evolved from the program that SMUD was actually running at one point. They call it the BTAG, Biomass Technology Advancement Group. That is an informal confederation of folks. There isn't really a completely formal structured process, and in that process that does exist, of a number of partners working to make this happen. The fact that the jails generate food waste is known, but a specific effort working with them hasn't happened as a part of that process.
Okay, that seems like a terrific.
Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's I have to believe a great amount of feedstock that would come out of both facilities. So I'm hopeful that that doesn't get lost in the.
Yeah, it won't be lost. We're actually ginning up the outreach process. In the next few weeks, there will be some more outreach. We're working in coordination with Burke to do a multi-tiered process, and you'll hear a little bit more about that, and you'll hear more about it at the Solid Waste Authority meeting on May 14th.
Great, thank you.
Director Kennedy also would like to.
Yeah, maybe I'm jumping ahead. I didn't look ahead in your presentation, but as of April 1st, isn't this required to separate out
Yes.
waste?
And I'll again turn to Tim.
Yes. You can see on the table here, as of April 1st, it's required. The issue that I think you'll be hearing about when you're actually hearing this on the 14th will be how aggressively you would work to enforce versus educate.
Okay.
And the issue there is if you actually were extraordinary, and you can see actually on the January 1st, 2017, just a few months later, the size of the facility that generates drops in half.
Right.
So you really are looking at, but the question is how aggressively would you enforce versus educate versus train?
Got it. Thanks.
And then just more of a proactive thing is that I believe Director Kennedy and when he was on the school board, and the school board continued to work to create a central kitchen. And I think as a proactive opportunity, the Sac City Unified Central Kitchen could be you could bake in these opportunities at the forefront of its planning if we reached out early. So just as a note of opportunity. Please continue.
Thank you. So schools are facing.
Yeah, sorry.
So schools are facing additional costs, and some of those are associated with hard costs, some are training. But with site-specific training, I've found that those costs can be minimized. This is a new concept, and several levels of staff are needed to learn what needed to be trained in what to do. There's the custodial staff, there are lunchroom aides, there are teachers on site, there's kitchen staff, if I didn't mention that, from principals that are on site and on-site managers to those that are at more of an administrative level. They all need to be onboarded to make sure that this process is successful. There's additional work required by the generator, and you can kind of see that illustrated in these photos. It was pajama day at this school during the week that we were kicking off food waste recycling. Some participants are enthusiastic and learn quickly and become fully invested, and others are reluctant. And I'll say that the issue is never really with the students. It's mostly staff on site and off that need the most training. So just getting these things and sites transition takes time and a lot of effort.
Okay. And Katie actually took these photos, right?
Some of them.
Or some of them?
Yeah. Yes.
She's the person at Breathe that actually goes out to the schools and runs this program amongst the other things she does. We appreciate her work and her energy in helping to do this.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and if any of the directors who may want to participate, if you want to invite us to school events, I'm sure that sometimes we do like to let the inner child in us sing out.
That would be great. I'll take it.
Especially some people right to my left.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And now I'd like to introduce Dave Seekich. He's the president of Atlas Disposal, and he's going to cover a couple of the industry aspects of this.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Atlas has been providing waste and recycling collection in the greater Sacramento area since 1998. And in 2012, we launched a food waste organics collection program. And, you know, that's before there was any legislation to support it. So we've got some good, passionate customers that have worked through some of the issues that are inherent in the food waste collection. But beyond those, it's becoming harder and harder to bring on new customers. You know, even though this is now coming on 4 years old for us, we still have less than 100 customers that have prescribed to the program. Our customer base is upwards to 5,000, and we've identified about 2,000 that by 2020 will fall under the regulatory requirement of 1826. So I wanted to talk just briefly about a couple of the challenges that we see. Unlike the traditional recycling, where there is an economic benefit for a successful program, and businesses can actually save money if they put the appropriate program in place. Food waste, because of the cost of the conversion technology and the collection cost, we're not going to see a savings. I mean, I think in the best case scenario, our customers are going to see no increase in their cost over trash, and often are going to see a 10 to 20% increase in the cost. So because of that, the education and the training becomes more and more important. If we want to see a system fail, you know, when somebody signs up, we deliver a bin, and that's all we do. Within a month or two, they'll call up and cancel, and they'll be so frustrated with the program because there's so much back of the office work that needs to be done. So what the hauling community, how we've responded, and you've got a very supportive hauling community that, you know, is anxious to take on this challenge. Is we have dedicated recycling staff that goes out and helps our customers in the back office with training, where to put the bins so that the program is successful. And we've had this since the start of the business recycling and even construction and demolition. But I think if I could point anything out to you, it would just be that because there's not an economic motivator, this program is going to take a village to get it off the ground. It's going to take a Herculean effort. And we're seeing a lot of training. We have a lot of customers that want to do this, but once they realize the cost of the additional containers and the management cost of really hand-holding with their employees to, you know, change their behavior in terms of the source separation is usually where they make a decision not to participate. With that, I'd open up to any questions that you might have. I will say also that the state prison system does have a food waste program in response to Supervisor Cerna's comments.
Director Peters has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. How often do you pick up these containers?
You know, at a minimum once a week. When we started, we were very concerned about the summer because what you're doing is taking the most anaerobic part of the trash, yes, and it goes smelly, stinky, super, super fast. So at a minimum once a week, and we do 2-3 times a week. We've got some customers that are 4 times a week. We're collecting out at the Sacramento airport. We've got some schools we collect at, pizza parlors, Kaiser Hospital. I mean, we've got a laundry list of great customers.
I'm more concerned about the smaller businesses. I've had a couple of complaints with this problem overlapping a social problem that we're dealing with on our other boards. Sure. And that is the homeless know when the trash comes, when this food product comes out, and they just are lined up waiting. Yes. Particularly if it's not, waste off of someone's plate, if it's baked goods or things like that are just day old. And they're just waiting in the back, and they go through their trash, and so it ends up attracting them to their stores. And I don't really know what to tell them about that.
It is a challenge. We've worked with a lot of the restaurants in the downtown area, and they can't put their food waste cart out into the alley and just leave it there. So what they've done is they keep it inside, they push it out on collection day, and then they remove it quickly.
They keep it inside. How does that work with the environmental health?
I don't know that.
Has anybody else had any comments like that from their constituents?
We have a tremendous amount of restaurants, and I haven't heard anything because some of the Midtown restaurants have tried to pilot this, but not those concerns, more just the logistics. Director Natoli?
Well, I think Mr. Kennedy wanted to talk about the same point, so did you want to point
No.
that? Oh, okay. Just Dave, and I guess for anybody else here, to Supervisor Cerna's point a little while ago, I think some of the institutions, again, separate from the small business we were talking about a moment ago, but where we have fairly high volume, I would think that the County of Sacramento needs to be a leader in this. And so whether it's main jail or juvenile hall or mental health treatment center, any place where we have a tremendous amount of food prep, certainly our CCC, where we have 2,500 people in both the main jail and at our CCC that are dependent upon, the preparation of food. That I don't know what we're doing with all the green waste, but it would seem to me that, and I don't know, again, if you have contact with any of the county facilities, but where we have those, I think that
I would add to that the airport, too.
Yeah, well, he said we have the airport.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, one of your compactors at the airport is dedicated to food waste.
Yeah, but to your knowledge, Dave, are either the jail facilities or mental health treatment center or juvenile hall, are any of those participating?
In my conversation with staff, I know they're talking about it. I don't believe that they have anything implemented.
Okay, well, I guess we need to do more and talk about it and try to figure it out. And there's probably costs associated with it, but I guess we need to be setting a bar for this. So, okay, thanks.
If I could address 2 points quickly, we deal with scavenging in all of our containers. We deal with it even in the traditional recycling for the bottles and cans, and used to be cardboard until the recycle market kind of dropped. And so we have locking mechanisms. There is no perfect system, but we do have ways to lock the containers to where they can't get in. And then my second point would be on the cost of the service. We work in our industry on the economy of scale. So the more customers we have, the cheaper it is to pick up every one of those customers. And the AB 1826, although well-intended, phases in the participation over a 4-year period, which makes those first adopters that fall under the regulation because of the amount of food waste they generate or organic material they generate, it makes the program much more expensive for them than it will be 2020 when it's fully implemented. So, I don't know how you combat that, but to Supervisor Natoli's point, more people in the program will help keep the cost level.
All right, we have a couple more directors who'd like to speak. Director Kennedy?
Yeah, just briefly, this is really good public policy, but the devil's in the details, and there's issues that, of course, the state, they pass down to us, and we get to figure out how it works. In addition to Supervisor Peters' issue about creating smorgasbords across the county, in our zoning codes, each one of these jurisdictions need to look at, when we require enclosures. Well, now we require one enclosure. Now we're going to be putting extra dumpsters in, and there's going to be one enclosure. And so this is a big issue. It sounds like it's a small thing, but it's going to have incredible impact, particularly on small businesses. So
I would agree with that.
All right, Director Frost.
Dave, I was wondering what the end product is. Is it making fuel? Is it making mulch? What is the potential coming out of this?
The current Clean World facility, both at the Old South Area Transfer Station and in Davis, actually, both of those facilities take food waste. The one in the county goes to a transportation fuel, so all the methane goes to a transportation fuel. And then there is a digestate. The solids, not to get too technical, but the solids go in at about 80% moisture, and the reduction in volume is like 95%. So, but there is that 5% of solids that have to come out, and it is a compost product that goes out on the fields. The one in Davis goes to electricity, so its primary product is electricity and goes right into the grid.
All right.
So you're sorting that out with machines, hopefully not people having to sort through all that.
Yeah, no, it's basically a decomposition, process without oxygen, which accelerates it and allows them to pull off the methane that's created as the organic material decomposes. And then that methane is cleaned up, compressed, and then put into not only the Atlas fleet, but other waste fleets, school buses, shuttle buses, service vehicles. So it's been a wonderful program. The good thing is it works.
It's really a model program. I mean, the opportunity to take some of the stuff out of the rest of the waste stream to turn it into something valuable, whether it's biogas for transit or whatever other purpose, or electricity, and then to use the compost versus having that methane go into the environment, create more greenhouse gas trapping conditions, I think is part of why the state wants us to do this. The devil, I agree, is in the details, but I think it's a unique opportunity to increase our level of air quality, health, and so I really appreciate all that Atlas has done as a leader on this. I think you're a leader in the industry, and so it speaks very loudly.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Mr. Harris?
Dave, question for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were done. Sorry.
So currently, what percentage of our solid waste stream is actually digestible material?
The organics is 30% of your overall waste, right?
30%.
So, and then 18% of that is food waste.
Okay.
So it's a big number. I mean,
yeah,
if you look,
it is. It's very significant.
It's substantial. It's just, how do we change the behavior to get people to sort it out in an effective way, in a cost-effective way? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
And so finally, when this comes to the Solid Waste Authority Board, we wanted to put an air quality spin on this today and bring this forward to this board so that you could, those of you that are on the Solid Waste Authority Board can have that perspective when you go and change hats and put that other hat on.
All right. Thank you very much. That concludes our official items. Any director comments? Seeing none, I'll adjourn the meeting of the Air Quality Management District.